welcome. Hello. We are excited about today's webinar, part 3. Here's how to build and nurture business credit through relationships. On behalf of our president, Ron Busby, our board, Chambers, and our staff, thank you for attending. I'm Tiffany Meza-Hellor with the U.S. Black Chambers Incorporated, affectionately known as the National Voice of Black Businesses. We represent over 140 Black chambers of commerce and small businesses across the nation and are founded on 5 pillars of service: advocacy, access to capital, contracting, entrepreneurial training, and chamber development. This webinar was crafted in collaboration with our chambers of commerce, providing technical assistance and resources to businesses across the U.S. with the U.S. Small Business Administration's SBA Community Navigator Pilot Program. Thank you for your assistance in developing and sharing this program. Our team at USBC, as well as our 20 Navigator chambers, look forward to being a resource to you and your businesses as you navigate through this journey. In today's webinar, part 3 of the Access to Capital series, let's discuss the basics when it comes to business credit. Credit purpose, credit history, and credit finances are all areas that require constant nurturing. Let's discuss best practices for maintaining sustainable business credit through local community relationships. Join us as we reveal answers to tough questions like, what is the best business account to open for my business? What small business products are right for my business? How do I build credit to pay expenses for my existing business? Before we introduce today's guest, I encourage you to drop your questions into the chat and we will address as many as possible at the end of today's webinar. Any questions we don't get a chance to answer during this webinar, we'll make sure we get those answers after the webinar. Our distinguished speaker today is John Morales, SVP Business Growth Strategy, East Region, Small Business Banking, Wells Fargo. John is a purpose-driven leader who embodies the essence of effective leadership, empowering people to recognize their true worth and potential. This guiding principle has focused his leadership lens squarely on people development. As the SVP, Growth Strategy and Development Leader at Wells Fargo, he spearheads small business banking's customer-focused growth and execution strategy across the East Coast with a competency-based approach, allowing him to pair customer pain points with the strengths of the bank. Throughout his journey, John's diverse experience in the financial services industry has been united by his unwavering philosophy: build, grow, succeed. This mantra encapsulates his relentless drive for personal and professional growth. John firmly believes that success lies in continuously building upon life's challenges, ultimately mastering any task or obstacle that comes his way. John has a proven track record, I'm so excited to hear you speak, sir, of driving growth, problem solving, and measured risk taking. He has made a significant impact throughout his career, consistently delivering top and bottom line improvements for all stakeholders. With his unwavering commitment to build, grow, succeed, John continues to leave a lasting legacy in the financial services industry. It is an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us, Mr. Morales. Welcome.
Thank you, Tiffany. The pleasure is all mine. And I tell you, as I was listening to the intro, I thought to myself, the only person that could have possibly written that was my mother. Reason being, she's probably the only person that thinks that highly of me. But having said that, I'm so excited to be here with you and the rest of the U.S. Black Chamber, as well as some of the folks that are participating here, to go over essentially a very important topic, one that is near and dear to my heart, the access to credit and how to essentially manage a relationship with a credit partner. And the reason that's so important to me is because, you know, a full 25% of small businesses fail within the first year. 45% of small businesses fail within the first 5 years. And 65% of all small businesses fail within 10 years. And there's one basic reason for that. And that reason is solely the inability to access credit. So with that, our goal here at Wells Fargo, where I champion a customer-focused approach to getting to understand what our customers' pain points are, assessing how those pain points affect their growth, and then removing the pain points and providing the solutions that they need, whether it be credit or cash flow solutions, to help them navigate their industry, to help them navigate the landscape, whether it be an up economy or down economy, is something that brings us great joy. So with that, we're going to get kick-started here and jump right in to managing business credit. On our agenda, there are 5 key things, really 4, that we will highlight. Managing credit, what potential lenders will look for when you're looking for credit, the business credit life cycle, and making sense of financing options. And then clearly, again, we'll discuss free educational resources that are available to you when you consider, again, navigating the credit landscape. So what does managing credit look like? I say all the time, you have to be intentional about the things that you're trying to do. And that is no different when it comes to financing opportunities and managing credit. How can your business rely on credit? Right? There are 3 ways that you can do that. Provide working capital, right? That's one of the things that you get from credit. It supports your business's growth, and you take advantages of opportunities. So when you think about working capital, the lifeline of every business is cash. But what tends to happen is when we offer a service, we may or may not get paid instantly. So therefore, we don't have access to the cash, although the service has been rendered. In some instances, we do, others we don't. Well, credit provides you the working capital that you need until you get paid for the services that you rendered. It supports your business's growth. Do you need to purchase real estate because your business is growing? Do you need to acquire another entity because of your business's growth? Well, credit allows you to take advantage of those set opportunities. It's one thing to have credit or try to gain access to it, but it's another to understand how, from a resource perspective, valuable a banker can be. Bankers tend to want to be partners, folks that you can talk to on a consistent basis around the things that are going throughout your business. And they're able to help you benchmark your business vis-a-vis the industry that you're in, to help you navigate wherever you are in your business's life cycle, right? They help to review your business situations, whether it be, hey, I plan on moving to a new facility. What do I need to consider when making those moves? I want to buy real estate. What do I need to consider when doing that? And so they're an advocate for you, but at the same token, an advisor. Discuss future business goals. One of my favorite questions that I used to love asking as a banker was, what's your 6-year plan? 6-year plan, it always catches people off guard because they've heard of a 5-year plan, but not a 6-year plan. And it's such a great conversation starter because our goal is to learn from you what you want to do and then put the mechanisms in place to help you get there. So it's one thing, again, to try to gain, the wonderful things that access to credit can provide you, but it's another to have the relationships that allow you to do that in a sustainable way. So the relationship with your banker, and frankly, not just your banker, but advisors that are around you to help you navigate the, again, credit landscape as well as the growth landscape. Next slide, please. How do you take control of your credit profile? Okay, number 1, creating a sound financial footing. Okay, you're reading the first bullet point and you're saying to yourself, how is it that establishing a checking and savings account specifically for your business and separate from your personal accounts, how does that help with your credit profile? Frankly speaking, when you establish a checking and savings account on your business's profile, you're literally on the map. The bank is keeping records for your business, and it's not something that you're looking at from a personal lens anymore. It's literally a business profile that helps you to establish not necessarily a trademark on your credit profile, but it does say, hey, I am serious about business, and we're establishing our cash management process with the ability for us to have a checking and savings account. A strong payment history may strengthen your credit profile. There's nothing more important than showing a lender your capacity to pay, but also your willingness to pay. Strong payment history says I'm willing to pay my debts on a personal basis. Thereby, I am credit worthy on the business side. Review your personal credit profile yearly and clear up any issues. And the reason that that's important is because sometimes things may arise on your credit history that you're unaware of. And because you're unaware of it, it lingers and thereby deteriorates your credit profile without you knowing. And when you go to acquire credit, you're unable because of something on your report that you didn't even know about. So with that said, you want to make sure that you're gauging your credit profile on an annual basis. That's the very least. I personally look at my credit profile quarterly. There are different means to do that in our modern day that makes it really easy for you to assess what's going on in your credit profile and how do you keep it fully intact. Bank strategically. Consolidate banking relationships. It's good to have multiple relationships. However, anything beyond a couple relationships with a bank is too much. It's excessive. And the reason for that is because then you're trying to build relationships and you're essentially spreading yourself thin in terms of your capacity to build financial relationships with a bank. And once you build those relationships, the bankers, the professional staff at banks tend to get to know you and assess who you are from a credit profile perspective, from a capacity to pay perspective, and thereby are able to help you in the future when you do need credit. Okay, you want to be in a position where you have a strong banking history, okay, because it supports your credit worthiness. You want to demonstrate a consistent flow of funds, money coming in the business regularly from sales of your operation to show and say, hey, look, I am worthy of your credit because here's a stream of cash flow that's coming on a consistent basis, and it's coming through your institution that helps to support you in the long run. Cultivate the relationship. It says, visit your banker regularly. I'm of the mind that your banker should frankly visit you in the sense that they get to know you and your profile and your business and the things that you're trying to accomplish on a consistent basis. My advice usually is for you to have your banker visit you on a quarterly basis. So you provide them context in terms of what's happening within your business. You give them access to your financial statements, and you're asking yourself, well, why would I want to do that? Because that banker is in a position to read those financial statements, benchmark it against what's happening in your industry, benchmark it against what's happening in our current landscape and say, you have yourself a thriving business right now based on those financial statements, or here are the areas that you need some improvement to help you, again, when you do come to them down the line for credit. And it says also for you to be clear about your situation and goals. If you're aligned with your banker around what it is that you want to do, then the two of you together, right, can then map a strategy to get there. And it's not you by yourself, but you have someone in your corner. I like to say, hey, you're an expert at what you do. However, allow your bank and your banker to advise you because they are experts in banking and helping you down the line. Next slide, please. Get to know your credit reporting. Clearly, you're aware of credit reports. They aggregate information over many sources. It provides context into your payment history, again, your willingness to pay debt, the credit usage. What percentage of my accounts, of my credit, am I using? The lower the percentage of your credit that you're using, the better your credit score. And the reason for that is you're in a position where your cash flow is stronger when you're using less credit. Okay. Debt load. Are you heavily in debt, or is the debt load lighter? Again, we're trying to assess what cash flow looks like. And essentially the credit report, the information that goes in that report helps us to come up with or derive a score that provides context of, hey, are you paying on time? Are your accounts to a point where they're maxed out and therefore you can take on no more debt? How long has your credit been established? Are you new to this and therefore need some coaching and guidance around how to use your credit to get yourself in a better position down the road? All these are things that one needs to consider when you think about your credit report and, more importantly, your credit score. Next slide, please. The 5 C's of credit, the infamous 5 C's of credit, right? Credit history, collateral, capital, conditions, and capacity. And I like to add a 6th one, which I'll share in a little bit. How have you handled past credit obligations may help indicate what a lender may accept in the future. Your ability to show you can pay on your personal credit profile helps lenders to make decisions on your business profile. If you can handle credit at the personal level, the thought process is you're responsible to handle credit on the business aspect as well. Collateral. What is it that you can pledge from an asset perspective to essentially make the lender feel that if I lend against this asset, the chance of loss is less for me? Personal and business assets that may offer a backup source of repayment. Okay. Capital. Skin in the game. It's one thing to come to a lender and say, I need $100,000. It's a whole different ballgame to come to a lender and say, I need $100,000. I already have 5,000 of it. I already have 10,000 of it, or 20,000. It says that I believe in what I'm doing, so much so that I'm willing to put up my own money. It's a game changer. So capital is personal investment in the business and business assets that can be turned into cash. Conditions. Everything that affects your ability to repay a loan, including internal and external factors. Capacity. How your business will generate enough cash to repay the loan and any other commitments. Look at that for a second. If you read the 5 C's, you see cash mentioned a few times, because everything around your ability to borrow comes back to your cash flow, right? So the 6th C, that is a C for John and no one else, right, is can we, right? So credit history, collateral, capital, conditions, capacity, and can we, right? Can we meaning how are things going on in the environment? So it ties closely to conditions, right? Can we do this loan, right? But these are all things that you should consider as you're processing your credit profile, your credit report, your credit score. And then these 5 C's, these are things that are building blocks for you understanding how to gain access to capital. Next slide, please. What would a lender or potential lenders look for? Next slide. Credit purpose. What do you need the money for? Right? Oftentimes, we find business owners will come to us and say, hey, I need a loan that is backed by my business to do something personally. That is not a purpose that we will be okay with, because any credit from your business should be focused on your business, right? So if it's to buy real estate for your business, if it's to buy equipment for your business, if it's to provide working capital for your business, all these are things that we can comply with. But we cannot give you a loan to go invest in another property per se, right? Because it's not tied to your business. We'll make sure that's clear. The credit purpose is very important, And whenever you're going to a bank to ask for money, make sure you have in mind, hey, what do I need this money for? That's clear to you, therefore you can make it clear to your banker. Credit history. Describe your credit profile accurately to ensure there are no surprises. Oftentimes we go through applications and there's no mention of deterioration, let's say on a credit profile. You have to be upfront, because then we can partner with you and coach you around what it is that you need to do and how you need to do it to get to the point where you can do it. There are many business owners that came to us up front and they said, hey, here are the things that we're dealing with. And we were able to partner with them. And as a result, we were able to accomplish exactly what it is that they wanted to do. But that's because up front, everyone knew what was going on and were engaged in trying to solve for the pain point, as opposed to not knowing and then finding out on the back end. It's not that we can't help you on the back end once we find out, but we slowed the process down. So anything you can share upfront with your banker, clearly someone that you trust and want to work with, is beneficial to you in the long run. Company finances. Provide cash flow projections to demonstrate your ability to repay the loan. Oftentimes, the loans that we make will have a historical component to them, meaning that our focus is, let's look at the last 2 years worth of financials, 3 years worth of financials to understand your capacity to repay a loan. In some instances, though, that may not be available. In instances like that, what we typically do is look at projections, right? Cash flow projections are where you think you're going to land the next 3 months, 6 months, year, based on the pipeline of revenue that you have coming in, right? And if we understand that, and we have the historical component, it makes it much easier for you to be able to access capital and be in a position where you can grow your business the way that you want. Application details. Ensure your sales and income numbers match what is on your most recent tax return. I cannot stress that enough, excuse me. And the reason for it is because you have to know your numbers better than anyone else. It's your business is your baby, right? Your accountant is there to provide you a service, right? So clearly they will know your numbers as well, but think about it. They have a ton of clients that they're dealing with, right? You want to be in a position where you're able to pinpoint what your numbers are and convey it in a way that your banker can understand, because they're going to have to go to battle for you with an underwriter. So they need to know the numbers just as well as you do. And the more that you can provide up front, the better off you are. Next slide, please. Enhance your cash flow. There are several ways to do that, because cash flow is literally what will be used again to pay your debt. Accelerate your inflows. Business in a nutshell can be said as accelerate how quickly you get paid, slow down how often you pay. Increase your receivables, decrease your payables, right? So how do you get paid quickly? The quicker you get paid, the quicker you're able to get the cash in your hand, the more you can do with said cash flow. Sometimes, depending on the business that we're in, sometimes we are banking our customers, meaning if there are terms and they're paying you in 30 days, 60 days, that means you're banking them for 30 days, you're banking them for 60 days. Well, how do you turn that to a situation where they want to pay you, let's say in 15? Maybe in some instances, you provide them a discount to get cash sooner, because money in hand now is worth than money in hand 30 days from now, right? If you're in a position to provide some discounts, get money in your hand as soon as possible. Offer customers more payment options, right? So if a customer is paying you by check, well, what we know is that check, if they're not in the same vicinity as you and they have to mail it, well, it's going to take time for that check to get there. Whereas they can pay you via ACH, they can pay you via wire. Your goal is to provide as many forms of payment as possible that allow you to get paid as soon as possible. Monitor your costs, track bills and inventory, right? So you want to manage a business that is efficient and effective, right? When you think about tracking bills, when is the bill due, right? I had a customer who wanted to pay stuff the moment they came in the door, but that came to us and wanted a credit line. Clearly, there's nothing with wanting a credit line, but when we looked at how he was managing all of his financial situation, we realized he has 30 days to pay a lot of his payables, but he was paying them right away. Thereby, we said, hey, why don't you just pay the bills when they're actually due? Pay the payables when they're actually due. That way, you just created 30 days of cash flow for yourself. Now, we still ended up giving the gentleman a line because his business needed a line to grow, but he got an additional 30 days of cash flow that he didn't have before because of the advice that we provided him. Okay. Know your payroll obligations, right? Your associates are your most critical asset. Can we go back to the previous slide, please? Not sure what happened. There we go. Know your payroll obligations. You got to make sure you have payroll intact where you're paying your people clearly, consistently, because they're an asset to your company, to the growth of your company. But know those obligations so that way you're able to manage accordingly. How much do I need to have in the bank to meet payroll on a consistent basis, right? Watch your outflows. Manage cash flow with credit, okay? Essentially, how can I pay certain things with debt? And then when I need to, just pay the debt off on a monthly basis. That way your liquidity or cash flow continues to grow in the bank, right? And at the end of the month, you just write a check to pay everything off and you start that process again. The more cash you have in the bank, the better. And these days, there are tons of rewards that you can participate in that allow when you do put things on credit, you're being paid to do so. Thereby, again, in some instances, you can get cash back, creating more cash flow, depending on how much credit you're using on a monthly basis, and other forms of reward. Take advantage of trade discounts or barter arrangements. Same thing with you when you're offering terms to a customer, and you can provide them terms, discounts for them to pay you sooner. Same way, okay? When someone extends you credit, right, you can then decide when to pay them, right? And in essence, to ensure that, again, you're paying when you're capable and not extending yourself, if that makes sense. Cover your taxes. Set aside funds to cover all of your taxes. Clearly, we do not want to get in Uncle Sam's crosshairs, right? So you want to make sure you put money aside to pay taxes when they are due. Challenge everything. Are you getting value from every relationship? Are you getting value from your banker? Are you getting value from your CPA, from your attorney, from your financial advisor? Are you getting value from your vendors, your suppliers? Once you challenge these relationships, you'll come to find that many instances they can do better than what they're offering you. But the reason that they're offering you what they are is because you accepted it. Right? So challenge everything and get to the point where you're comfortable with saying, hey, I'm going to get a second opinion. When you do that and your relationships realize you will do that on a consistent basis, they will always present you the best offer they have. Okay. Can you cut expenses? And if you can, which are those expenses that you can cut on a consistent basis, right? One of the expenses that we found that if you're within a lease, right, sometimes you can negotiate for that lease to be reduced. At times, if you can't negotiate the lease to go down and your term's up, well, find another avenue for you to go rent or lease somewhere else that is maybe a little cheaper, because that's usually one of the biggest costs that a small business faces. So you want to manage your costs with that kind of mindset of I'm not going to accept the status quo, because the moment I do, someone, frankly speaking, is taking my business to task and probably charging me more than they ought to. Next slide, please. The business credit life cycle. Next slide. Every business has a life cycle, right? You have seed or startup, right? That's where you build a solid foundation for success. And personal and family assets are utilized as part of your funding. Business credit cards, business line of credits, healthcare financing, startup if you are healthcare, and micro lenders. In some instances, frankly, you can have a venture-backed business, a private equity-backed business. But for the most part, most small businesses are bootstrapping it, okay? And their personal credit cards are maxed out. They've reached out to family for financing. And, banks usually will finance startups with business credit card, although there are times that we do otherwise, but for the most part, usually business credit cards. But that's hard on the business owner because you're just getting started out and everyone is trying to feel your business out to see, hey, is it going to succeed? What are the chances of success? One of the first things that I shared with you is, again, 25% of businesses fail within the first year, right? So everyone wants to get beyond that first year before they double down. But there are instances where, again, depending on the business, you can find other means, but usually this is how startups are funded. Next, please. It looks like the slide skipped the growth segment, but the growth segment, essentially you're at a point where the business is getting to be more stable. And at that point, you're starting to be able to get other forms of financing, usually from a bank, from other lenders as well, because there's some trajectory, there's some history that shows you've done things, you've managed the business favorably, and therefore you're in a position to grow the business and with the help of additional capital from external sources. Once your business hits maturity, you start to pay down debt because cash flow is so strong, right? That debt you acquired from the growth stage, now you're at a position where you can actually pay that down. So if I borrowed $500,000 in my growth phase to buy real estate, for example, and I was making the monthly payment when I first got the loan, but 3-4 years down the line, sales have grown because I bought the building so I can expand. And therefore now that building, instead of it being a pain to make a payment, I can make double the payment. I can make 3 times the payment. So I want to pay down that debt, right? Because I have the excess cash flow to do so, right? Now, you can either do that to pay it off quicker, or that can happen too, because over time, right, the debt is being paid down and you're not taking on any additional debt. But there's some businesses that have a tendency to want to pay debt down quickly because they're debt adverse. Some business owners are, and we don't see anything wrong with that. However, there's really no rush to do that, but it makes some folks more comfortable. Refinancing commercial real estate equity. Okay, if you need to grow the business, right, there are other ways to do so, right? And one of those ways is essentially to refinance the property that you do have, right? To do other things, again, as long as it ties back to your business. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm going to build out an additional wing in a building that I bought. Other times it's other things that are related to the business. But as long as the purpose of the credit is tied to the business, it's par for the course. And you can also open a commercial equity line of credit or loan to essentially do the same. Okay, next section. So here you're trying to take your business, which is now mature, to the next level, right? What does that look like to take a business that's mature to the next level? So let's say your business Seed, you're at zero. Growth, you're $1 to $3 million in revenue. Mature, you're about $5, $6, $7 million in revenue. And you're thinking, how do I blow the cover off this ball? How do I go to $20 million in sales, right? Well, there are ways to do that. Clearly you got to have a strategic plan in place to think about growing the business from 5 to 20. What does the infrastructure of the business look like at 5, right? And what does it need to look at 20 for us to grow to that point? Who do I need to bring on from a sales perspective to help get us to $20 million? Who do I need to bring on from an operations perspective to make sure that as we're growing, we can support that growth by delivering the service that we need, right? Who are the legal partners that I need to tie into? Because clearly the problems that I have at $5 million are going to be different than the problems that I have at $20 million, right? And so you're thinking about building your team, but as you're doing that, clearly there are different means to obtain financing. That building that you bought, right, when you were in the growth phase, you might need a bigger building, right? Because again, the revenue that you were earning at 5 million, the amount of people that worked for you at that point is going to be different than the amount of people that work for you when you're making $20 million, depending on the business that you're in, right? So you have to start thinking and processing along those terms and thinking to yourself, how am I going to shift, right, from a financing perspective to get from point A, the 5 million, to 20 million. Again, these clearly are placeholders that I'm using, but whether it's 1 million to 5 million, right? Some businesses are mature at 1 million. For example, you have a doctor's office, right? That might be 2 practicing doctors. If they reach $1 million, that's success, right? They're not designed to be 20, 30, $40 million businesses, but other businesses like a manufacturing company, right? Depending on what you manufacture, can be 20, 30, 40, 50, $100 million even or more. So keep those things in mind as you think about, okay, expanding through your business life cycle. Again, the type of business that you have is important when you're thinking about what maturity is. A mature doctor's office is different than a mature manufacturer. So I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind. Next point, please. So there are many reasons why you may transition away from your business. One of them is you decide, you know what, I'm going to retire. The other is I've done this for 5, 6 years. I'm interested in another business venture. I'm going to sell this one and move on, right? And clearly a host of different reasons why you would transition out of a business, okay? But what you want to think of when you get to this point is, again, paying debt down. The less debt you have when you're transitioning, the more equity you get back when you, for example, if you decide to sell, right? And you're essentially resetting the business at zero from a debt standpoint because that raises your equity, right? And refinancing commercial real estate equity to get your equity portion out if, again, you decided to sell to someone. Clearly, the property could be held and you rent it back to the business owner that acquired the business, or you can, frankly speaking, sell it all together, right? But there are different ways that can happen. But where you move in your business life cycle impacts the kind of credit that's available to you. And that's something that, again, you should consider. Next, please. Make sense of financing options. Next slide. Two ways, right, to receive funding, right? It's either secured or unsecured. When you think of unsecured, I want you to think about a personal credit card, right? If you're unable to pay that personal credit card, there's no collateral behind it. It's unsecured, right? The credit card company wants to get paid, so they will push hard to get paid. But if it gets to a certain point where you can't pay, they simply charge off the card. On the business side, It's very rare that any lender will lend to you on an unsecured basis. Okay, usually business loans are backed by some form of collateral. Remember the 5 C's of credit, right? Collateral was very high on that list. It's usually the second source of repayment behind cash flow, right? So types of collateral are cash, equipment, real estate, UCC liens, and etc. Right? So even let's say, for example, we're giving you a business credit card or a line of credit, right? That we say is collateralized by, frankly, nothing. We have a UCC lien, that makes sure that on the back end, somehow, some way, we will get paid, if that makes sense. Okay, there's always a form of collateral on the business side. Next slide. So what types of financing is right for you? Right? We know of credit cards. Okay, I'm not gonna double click there because I think everyone on this line knows what a credit card is. Lines of credit, it's a revolving source of funds. Again, it can be unsecured, but usually with banks, we have a UCC lien. Okay, commercial real estate financing. Okay, expand your business or purchase new commercial property, free up cash, right? Borrow against your equity. Okay, we have SBA loans and lines. SBA loans may be backed by the government. There's a variety of purposes that you can borrow from the SBA. There's a variety of terms. And you have fixed and adjustable rates associated with the SBA. Healthcare financing to support dentists, optometrists, physicians, and veterinarians. Again, line of credit and fixed rate loans with a variety of payments. And remember, depending on where you are at in your business life cycle, that's what dictates or indicates what kind of financing is right for you. If you are brand new to the business landscape and you're starting a business, chances are you're bootstrapping it. Your first step away from bootstrapping it, meaning you're no longer on your personal credit or family and friends, is probably a business credit card. That's usually how you get started from a business standpoint, right? The next step from there, depending on your ability to grow the company, right, and show some cash flow, you go into a line of credit. As your business continues to grow and sales continue to grow, you're in a position then, cash flow strong enough, and you want to stop paying $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month for lease, and you buy a property, and your payment may be $2,000. In some instances, buying a commercial real estate property is cheaper than renting, depending upon where your business is. So then you make that move, and we utilize the SBA to help folks, because again, oftentimes those loans are backed by the government and thereby present us an opportunity to where we can take on a little bit more risk. Next slide, please. Think creatively to find funding, right? So when you think about buying property, sometimes you may not be able to get funding from a bank, but the seller might be willing to finance it, meaning they give you a loan, you give them a down payment, but you're paying a mortgage to them every month, as opposed to paying a mortgage to a bank. Peer-to-peer lending. There are many different platforms on the internet that you can go to borrow from peer businesses, right? It's like a pool of money that's put together, and then you apply and you decide, hey, I'm gonna get some capital from a peer, as opposed to coming to the bank. I'm a business owner, I have some excess cash flow, I'm going to allow another business owner to borrow some of that cash flow. Factoring. Not my favorite because it costs more than most other types of credit that you can obtain. Factoring is literally someone coming in and looking at your receivables and providing you cash flow But again, the cost on that on that capital can be somewhat exorbitant. So I try to push people away from that at all costs, unless it's the only means to help them. Mission-based lenders are lenders that are focused on specific things, community development, focused on lending to churches specifically. So there are different lenders that are definitely mission-based. Your typical small business, though, I think will find a lot from community development grants. We work a lot with CDFIs, and those CDFIs, community development financial institutions, have a tendency to do things that a bank may not be able to, because you don't have the experience and are able to show the historical cash flow. So therefore, going to the CDFI that wants to build businesses in the community is one of those ways to do that. And their rates typically are very competitive, because their goal is to help support the community development and the business development in the community, as opposed to, again, trying to make a profit. So those are the options that are available to you that are somewhat more creative than a typical bank. And we work with those CDFIs many times to ensure that they can help you to not only get your financing that you need, but also get your paperwork in order, help you to understand what a bank would look for. So that way, when the business starts to grow to the point where a bank can provide the services that you need from a credit perspective, you can come to us and we can help you. They tend to be a great partner of ours. Next slide, please. Free educational resources. So we have a small business resources section on wellsfargo.com/business that you can go to access information about understanding your credit, credit and financing, securing and using credit. It's a site where a lot of our small businesses go to help them understand cash flow and build out certain things like spreadsheets for cash flow projection perspective that I spoke to earlier. It's a really great resource, not just for you to read, but also for you to get insight on what banks look for, not just Wells Fargo, but banks in general. Next slide, please. Frankly, the last piece is, if you need anything from us, we're available to you. Our goal is to help build the communities that we're in through the access of capital. And if we can do something, we will. If we cannot, what we typically do is find someone who can, because our goal is to ensure that every business that comes to us leaves better than once they interacted with us. I truly appreciate everyone's time today. I hope you found this session educational, insightful. And if you should need anything, by all means, please reach out to the means that are provided here on the screen. With that, Tiffany, I kick it back to you.
Incredible. Thank you, Mr. Morales, for sharing. This is indeed timely and valuable wisdom. You can imagine, to our listeners across the US, across the nation, our audience spans from across the board in where they are in developing their businesses, whether it's startup, they're thinking about it, they're 1 year in, or they're trying to scale from 1 million to 5 million, or firms 5 million to 20 million, to be able to partner with contracts on larger scales. The interesting part is it's just practice on top of practice. But Mr. Morales, your training today will be uploaded to our US Black Chambers YouTube library and used over and over and over again, because this is timeless information. We appreciate you for breaking it down, and you had me very calm listening to some very complicated concepts. Not complicated, but one does need to slow down to be able to master. I know a lot of business owners are like, oh, my CPA or my bookkeeper handles that. I don't know. No, that's not a great idea. They may be maintaining it, but the business owner should always know what's going on at all times, right? So we thank you. If you missed the welcome at the beginning of today's webinar, we indicated that any questions we did not get a chance to answer during this webinar, we'll make sure to get to those and answer them after the webinar. We are definitely going to send out the presentation to our registered attendees today. And I have one question. I know we're coming up on top of the hour. John, so say someone who watches this, right? And they're like, wow, Mr. Morales represents Wells Fargo. I want to go in there. What do I say exactly? Who do I ask for when I walk into the bank to be able to develop this type of relationship?
Great question, Tiffany, and I thank you for asking it. We have small business development professionals throughout the U.S. Who are very capable in helping small businesses take the next step in terms of learning how to access capital. And we're in most of the continental U.S. And so if you go into a branch and ask for a small business development professional, they will be able to guide you to someone. Mm-hmm. And if you're not able to get to someone at a branch, you can go to our website, right? wellsfargo.com/business and input your information as someone who is looking for assistance. And we will get someone to you in a timely fashion.
Small business advisor.
That's right.
Thank you. Excellent. USBC invites you, our listeners, to give us your feedback on today's session. Just scan the QR code you see on your screen and type in, or you can type in www.surveymonkey.com/r/biz future. I am looking in the chat for any questions. I believe you were extremely thorough. John, I don't see questions at this moment, but we will be following up with any and reaching back out to you if we need your assistance. So let's see. We'll just go ahead and we will close this webinar for today. Thank you for attending. This was the part 3. Here's how to build and nurture business credit through relationships. This was made possible through our work with the SBA Community Navigator program, funded in part through a grant with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Again, a tremendous thank you to you, Mr. John Morales. Again, SVP Business Growth Strategy, Region East Small Business Banking, Wells Fargo. Our Community Navigator Chambers, thank you for advocating for Black businesses across the U.S. And to you, our viewers, for sharing in this discussion by showing up. If your firm is looking to increase its revenue opportunities, USBC by Black is the only Black certification program with a business directory, providing businesses that certify access to private and public procurement opportunities, highlights, and other benefits. This online program can help prepare you for the contracting space as a documents preparation guide. So certified today by visiting usblackchambers.org/certification. Register today online at www.usblackchambers.org/webinars for our upcoming July webinars. Also, we are excited to announce our USBC National Conference. It will be in person July 19th through 21st, 2023 in Washington, D.C. Mr. Morales, we hope to see you there. Register today online at www.usbcconference.com. For more events like these, regularly visit and register for upcoming events on usblackchambers.org/webinars. Follow us on social media at usblackchambers.org. And if today's forum prompted additional questions and interests, please feel free to always contact us at programs@usblackchambers.org. John, thank you. Thank you for our listeners, and thank you all for joining us today.